Television history was made last night when tech billionaire Bill Gates stormed off The Late Show. After host Stephen Colbert's relentless mockery triggered an explosive confrontation that left the audience gasping. What began as playful banter quickly descended into unprecedented hostility, culminating in Gates ripping off his microphone and abandoning the interview. The red applause sign flashed as The Late Show with Stephen Colbert welcomed its most prominent guest of the season. Bill Gates stepped onto the stage with his characteristic awkward wave, adjusting his glasses as he settled into the guest chair. The audience's enthusiastic welcome seemed to put the Microsoft founder at ease, a comfort that would prove devastatingly short-lived. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome one of the richest men in the world, the co-founder of Microsoft and self-appointed savior of humanity, Bill Gates. Colbert's introduction carried its usual playful edge, but attentive viewers might have noticed something sharper in his tone tonight. Gates smiled through the introduction, appearing relaxed as he and Colbert exchanged pleasantries about the weather and his flight into New York. The conversation began innocuously enough, with Colbert inquiring about Gates' latest philanthropic ventures. "So, Bill, your foundation has been working on some new initiatives. Tell us about what's keeping you busy these days," Colbert prompted, leaning forward with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Gates perked up. "Well, Stephen, we're really excited about several projects. Our work on global health continues to be a priority, especially our efforts to eradicate malaria and improve sanitation in developing—" "Ah, yes, the famous toilet revolution," Colbert interrupted, his smile morphing into something more mischievous. "You've spent what? Hundreds of millions of dollars trying to reinvent the toilet? How's that flushing along?" A ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through the audience. Gates maintained his composure, though his smile tightened slightly. "Actually, Stephen, inadequate sanitation causes hundreds of thousands of preventable deaths each year, particularly among children. Our reinvented toilets don't require sewers or water connections, which makes them viable solutions for regions without infrastructure." Right, Colbert nodded with exaggerated seriousness. "So after all these years and millions of dollars, people are still pooping in buckets while you fly private jets to climate conferences." "Got it," the audience gasped. This wasn't the usual Colbert playful jab. There was venom behind it. Gates blinked rapidly, clearly taken aback by the hostility. "That's not an accurate characterization of—" "Let's talk about your agricultural initiatives," Colbert pressed on, not allowing Gates to finish. "You're now the largest private farmland owner in America. What's that about? Cornering the market? On corn? Monopolizing the means of production wasn't enough with software? Now you need to control food too?" The studio grew uncomfortably quiet. Gates' face flushed slightly, but he maintained his composure. "Our agricultural investments are focused on sustainability and helping small farmers adapt to climate change. It's about food security and—" "Food security," Colbert echoed with a theatrical eye roll. "Is that like computer security? Because we all remember how well Windows protected us from viruses." This drew a mixture of gasps and nervous laughter from the audience. The camera caught Gates' knuckles whitening as he gripped the armrests of his chair. "Stephen, I understand you're trying to be entertaining, but these are serious issues that affect billions of people," Gates responded, his voice controlled but tense. "Oh, I'm dead serious," Colbert retorted, dropping all pretense of joviality. "Just like your dead serious prediction that pandemics would be the greatest threat to humanity, right before you became the subject of every conspiracy theory imaginable. How convenient for your vaccine investments." Gates's expression darkened. "That's an irresponsible insinuation, and you know it." "Is it, though?" Colbert leaned forward, abandoning his usual slouch. "Let's talk about Windows Vista. Actually, no. Let's talk about your education initiatives. Common Core, how's that working out? Standardized testing and data collection, turning students into metrics. Another Microsoft product nobody asked for but everyone was forced to use. The tension in the studio was palpable now. The audience sat in stunned silence as the exchange veered further from entertainment into something far more hostile. Our education work is based on evidence, and evidence like the evidence that showed small schools were better for students? Until you dumped that project when it didn't give you the data you wanted? Colbert was relentless now, cutting off Gates at every turn. Or maybe we should discuss your nuclear power company, TerraPower. Another billion-dollar solution looking for a problem while existing renewable energy struggles for funding. Gates took a deep breath, visibly struggling to maintain his composure. The camera caught a producer making frantic signals from offstage, but Colbert seemed beyond caring. "You know what fascinates me, Bill?" Colbert continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Your incredible ability to fail upward. MS-DOS. Stolen. Windows, a poor imitation of Apple. Internet Explorer, a monopolistic disaster. Zune, need I say more? And yet here you are, positioning yourself as the world's unelected problem solver." The studio was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning. Gates sat perfectly still, his face a mask of controlled fury. "I've spent decades working on these issues, Stephen," Gates finally said, his voice dangerously quiet. "What exactly have you done besides make jokes from behind a desk?" "Oh, he bites back!" Colbert exclaimed with mock surprise, turning to the audience. "The philanthropist has claws. Tell me, Bill, is it philanthropy when it gives you control over global health policy without a single vote cast in your favor? Is it charity when your foundation investments include the very companies causing the problems you claim to solve?" The camera caught Gates glancing off stage, perhaps looking for rescue from a producer or commercial break, but none came. Colbert was on a roll now, years of carefully concealed animosity spilling out in prime time. "Your mosquito laser system. Remember that gem? Shooting mosquitoes with lasers instead of addressing standing water and poverty. Classic Gates, overcomplicated tech solution to a simple problem. Or how about your cloud-seeding weather modifications? Schemes? Playing God with the weather while telling the rest of us to reduce our carbon footprint?" Gates' breathing had become shallow, his legendary patience clearly wearing thin. The audience seemed frozen, witnessing something unprecedented. In late-night television, a complete abandonment of the unwritten rules of celebrity interviews. "You've made your point, Stephen," Gates managed, his voice tight. "Have I?" "Because I'm just getting started," Colbert replied, his eyes gleaming with an intensity that made even his longtime viewers uncomfortable. "Let's talk about your friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, maintained even after his conviction. Multiple meetings that you tried to keep secret. Care to explain that to your adoring public?" There was an audible collective intake of breath from the audience. Gates' face drained of color, then flushed crimson in rapid succession. "That's it." Gates stood abruptly, his chair scraping backward. "This isn't an interview. It's an ambush." He began fumbling with his microphone clip. "Ladies and gentlemen, it appears billionaires don't like accountability," Colbert announced to the stunned audience, standing as well. "What's wrong, Bill? Algorithm can't compute criticism? Blue screen of death imminent?" Gates yanked at his microphone clip with trembling fingers, his carefully cultivated public persona crumbling in real time. "I agreed to discuss my new book and climate initiatives," he seethed. "Not to be personally attacked for clickbait." "Clickbait?" Colbert's eyebrows shot up in theatrical surprise. "Is that what we're calling accountability now? Fascinating coming from the man who gave us Clippy, the most annoying digital assistant in history." The audience's nervous laughter only seemed to fuel Colbert's relentlessness. A floor director was making frantic cutting motions from the wings, but the host had committed to this collision course. "You want to talk about your climate initiatives?" Colbert pressed on. "Let's discuss your investment in private jets, while lecturing everyone else about their carbon footprint. Or maybe you're backing of solar geoengineering, literally blocking out the sun instead of addressing the root causes of climate change. Classic Gates, a tech hammer looking for every problem to be a nail. Gates finally freed himself from his microphone, dropping it unceremoniously onto the chair behind him. "You've clearly prepared quite the hit list," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Did you invite me here specifically to ambush me, or was this an impulse decision?" "Oh, Bill," Colbert's smile was razor-sharp. "Nothing impulsive about it. Unlike Microsoft Bob, remember that catastrophe? Or were you too busy planning how to make Windows 95 crash more efficiently?" The audience had stopped laughing entirely, now collectively holding their breath as they witnessed what was quickly becoming late-night television infamy. A CBS executive had appeared at the edge of the stage, conferring urgently with the floor director. "You know what your problem is?" "Stephen!" Gates took a step toward Colbert, abandoning all pretense of the mild-mannered philanthropist. "You mistake cynicism for intelligence. It's easy to tear down. It's hard to build. And you mistake wealth for wisdom." Colbert shot back without hesitation. "You think because you got rich selling software, you're qualified to re-engineer society. Your foundation operates with less oversight than a high school student council, yet influences global health policy more than most governments." Gates's jaw tightened visibly. "At least I'm trying to solve real problems. What exactly is your contribution beyond recycling jokes and pandering to whatever gets you ratings?" The audience gasped at Gates' unexpected counterattack. Colbert's eyes widened momentarily. He hadn't anticipated his target fighting back with such ferocity. "My contribution?" Colbert recovered quickly. "I don't pretend to be humanity's unelected savior. Let's talk about your polio eradication campaign. Billions spent and still not eradicated. Or your alliance for a green revolution in Africa, pushing industrial agriculture that's left farmers more dependent on expensive inputs. Or how about your modular nuclear reactor dreams? Still waiting for that technology to materialize while you burn through billions. You're completely mischaracterizing complex global challenges," Gates said, color rising in his face. "These problems can't be solved with sound bites and sarcasm. And they can't be solved by a tech billionaire's ego either," Colbert retorted. "Remember your prediction that the internet was just a fad? Or when you said 640K of memory should be enough for anybody? Your crystal ball seems consistently cloudy. Yet here you are shaping policy that affects millions." The tension had become unbearable. Camera operators exchanged nervous glances, unsure if they should continue filming what had clearly devolved beyond the boundaries of entertainment. "You've made it abundantly clear that you're not interested in a good-faith conversation," Gates said, taking another step toward the exit. "I wonder what personal vendetta is driving this." "No vendetta," Colbert insisted, though his flushed face suggested otherwise. "Just tired of the Bill Gates myth, the benevolent billionaire narrative. Let's talk about how your foundation's endowment is invested in fossil fuels and private prisons while you position yourself as a humanitarian. Or maybe your microchip brain implant company, literal mind control technology from the man conspiracy. Theorists already accuse of plotting world domination." Gates actually laughed at this, though it was hollow and bitter. "There it is. You're no better than the conspiracy peddlers. Next, you'll be asking about vaccines and 5G. "Don't deflect," Colbert pressed. "Your Breakthrough Energy Ventures Fund, billions, invested in long-shot technologies while proven climate solutions go begging. Your Computer History Initiative that conveniently rewrites your ruthless business tactics into innovation fairy tales. Your failed small schools initiative that you abandoned when the data didn't support your hypothesis. At least I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong," Gates fired back. "When's the last time you did that, Stephen? Or does your ego not permit it?" Someone in the audience let out a low, "Ooh," and others joined in, the atmosphere now more resembling a boxing match than a late-night talk show. My ego? Colbert scoffed. That's rich coming from a man who named his foundation after himself, who puts his name on every building and initiative, who can't stand the thought that some problems might not have a Bill Gates-approved technical solution. This is beneath you, Gates said, shaking his head. Or maybe it isn't. Maybe this is exactly who you are when the cameras are rolling and you need to perform outrage for ratings. Colbert's expression darkened. And maybe this is exactly who you are. A thin-skinned billionaire who can't handle legitimate criticism of your outsized influence and spotty track record. The executive producer had now stepped onto the stage, moving toward the host with clear intent to intervene. But Colbert wasn't finished. Let's not forget your digital ID initiative, tracking the world's poorest people like inventory, or your master teacher scheme, replacing experienced educators with cameras and algorithms, or your failed Common Core implementation that had parents and teachers united in opposition across political lines. Gates checked his watch in an exaggerated gesture. Are you about done? Because I've got actual work to do, not just reading cue cards someone else wrote. Hit a nerve, did I? Colbert's smile was cold. Let's talk about your AI investments. Creating technology that will eliminate millions of jobs while positioning yourself as a job creator. Or your aggressive patent enforcement that blocked COVID vaccine access for developing nations even as you portrayed yourself as a pandemic savior. The producer had reached Colbert now, whispering urgently in his ear, but the host shrugged him off with an irritated gesture. You know what your biggest failure is, Bill? Colbert continued, advancing toward Gates. It's thinking that being rich makes you right, that accumulating wealth somehow translates to moral authority, that the world needs your particular brand of technocratic oversight. Gates' composure finally shattered. And your failure, he said, voice rising, is mistaking character assassination for comedy, confusing cheap shots with courage. You invited me here under false pretenses to ambush me with half-truths and distortions for what? Clicks? Ratings? To prove you're not just another corporate mouthpiece? The studio fell silent as Gates's accusation hung in the air. Even Colbert seemed momentarily stunned by the billionaire's uncharacteristic display of raw emotion. The host's expression flickered. A brief, almost imperceptible crack in his performative armor, before hardening once more. Corporate mouthpiece? Colbert recovered, his voice dripping with mock indignation. That's rich coming from the man who transformed from ruthless monopolist to saint by hiring a PR army. Tell me, how much of your humanitarian image is manufactured by the same spin doctors who defended Microsoft during its antitrust violations? The floor manager was frantically signaling for a commercial break, but neither man seemed to notice or care. The audience sat frozen, witnessing what many would later describe as the most uncomfortable 11 minutes in television history. You know nothing about me, Gates replied, a cold fury replacing his earlier agitation. You've prepared a character, assassination based on cherry-picked failures while ignoring millions of lives saved through vaccination programs, disease prevention, and educational improvements. Oh, please, Colbert scoffed. Your foundation operates with less accountability than most dictatorships. You've effectively privatized global health policy. When did we vote to give you that power? Your so-called philanthropy is just governance, without representation. The CBS executive producer had now stepped directly into the camera frame, desperately trying to get Colbert's attention, but the host waved him away without breaking eye contact with Gates. You think I don't face accountability? Gates countered, gesturing broadly. Every initiative we launch is scrutinized by experts, evaluated against metrics, and adjusted based on outcomes. Meanwhile, you sit here night after night, consequence-free, making jokes at others' expense while contributing nothing of substance. Consequence-free? Colbert's laugh was brittle. I answer to viewers, to critics, to my own conscience. You answer to no one. You failed with tablet computing, failed with smartphones, failed with social media. Yet somehow you've positioned yourself as the world's technical advisor, collecting foundation management fees while paying zero capital gains tax on your appreciated Microsoft stock. Gates took a step closer to Colbert, close enough that a security guard at the edge of the stage began moving forward. "You want to talk about failure?" Gates asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "How about your failure to do basic research before this interview? The Gates Foundation has saved over 122 million lives through vaccination programs alone. What's your body count, Stephen? How many lives have your jokes saved?" "Typical," Colbert shot back. "Can't address legitimate criticism, so you deflect with emotional appeals. Let's talk about your failed prediction that COVID would be over by 2022, or your mosquito sterilization program that backfired spectacularly, or your synthetic palm oil venture that actually increased deforestation rates." Gates closed his eyes briefly, seeming to center himself. When he opened them, his gaze was ice cold. "I came here tonight because I respected your platform. I thought we might have an intelligent conversation about climate innovation, global health challenges, and technological solutions. Clearly, I was mistaken." "Oh, I'm sorry." Colbert's sarcasm was biting. "Did you expect the usual softball questions? Another platform to promote your carefully crafted image without scrutiny? That's not what happens here." "Scrutiny is welcome," Gates replied. "Character assassination disguised as comedy is not. You haven't asked a single question in good faith. You've mischaracterized complex initiatives, ignored contextual factors, and deliberately painted worst-case outcomes as inevitable failures rather than learning opportunities." The tension was unbearable now. Camera operators exchanged nervous glances as the control room desperately tried to figure out how to salvage what remained of the broadcast. The audience sat in stunned silence, many recording the unprecedented meltdown on their phones. "The difference between us," Colbert pressed on, apparently committed to this car crash of an interview, "is that I don't pretend my wealth makes me an expert on everything. I don't fly around in private jets while lecturing others about carbon footprints. I don't experiment on developing nations with unproven technologies." Something changed in Gates' expression then. A shift from anger to something more resolute, more final. "You know what, Stephen? You've made your point abundantly clear. You're not interested in dialogue. You're interested in destruction. Tearing down rather than building up. It's easy to criticize. It's hard to create solutions." "Don't lecture me about," Colbert began, but Gates cut him off. "I'm done." Gates turned toward the exit. "I've spent my life trying to solve some of the world's hardest problems, often failing, yes, but always learning and adapting. What exactly is your contribution beyond cynicism and divisiveness?" Colbert's face flushed crimson. "Walking away from criticism, the billionaire's privilege. Can't handle the heat, Bill?" Gates stopped and turned back, his composure regained. "This isn't heat, it's noise, and I've wasted enough time on it." With that, Gates strode toward the exit. A production assistant scrambled to intercept him, perhaps to retrieve the discarded microphone or to guide him through the backstage area, but Gates waved them off. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colbert addressed the audience with forced levity. "It appears the blue screen of death has affected Bill Gates himself. Maybe he needs to Ctrl-Alt-Delete this interview from memory." His joke fell flat in the stunned studio. From offstage came Gates' voice, loud enough to be caught by the boom microphones. "This is exactly why trust in media has collapsed. Congratulations on making it worse." Colbert's smile faltered as he realized the gravity of what had just transpired. The network executive was now physically standing between Colbert and the camera, frantically gesturing for a commercial break. "We'll be right back after—" Colbert began, but his words were drowned out by a commotion from offstage. "Don't touch me!" Gates' voice carried clearly through the studio. "Your host has said quite enough." I won't be manhandled by your security as well. The cameras swiveled toward the sound, catching Gates brushing off a security guard's attempt to guide him toward the exit. The billionaire's face was composed again, but his eyes blazed with cold fury. "Turn those cameras off!" the executive producer shouted. "Cut to commercial now." But the damage was done. The unprecedented confrontation between one of tech's most powerful figures and late night's sharpest wit was being broadcast live to millions and recorded by hundreds of audience members on their phones. "Mr. Gates," Colbert called out, suddenly seeming to realize he'd gone too far. "Perhaps we could—" "We're done here," Gates interrupted, addressing not Colbert but the audience directly. "Judge for yourselves whether this was journalism or cheap entertainment at the expense of work that actually matters." With that parting shot, Gates pushed through the exit door, leaving behind a stunned studio audience and a host who, for perhaps the first time in his career, was completely speechless. The silence lasted only seconds before the director finally managed to cut to commercial, but by then, the clip was already spreading across social media like wildfire. Gates' walkout was trending before the show even ended. When the broadcast returned from commercial break, Colbert sat alone at his desk, his expression uncharacteristically somber. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice lacking its usual confidence, "that was not how we expected tonight's interview to go." He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "While I stand by asking tough questions of powerful people, I think we can all agree that what just happened crossed certain lines of civility. For my part in that, I apologize." The audience murmured in surprise at this unexpected concession. "Tomorrow night," Colbert continued, "we'll have actress Emma Stone here to discuss her new film. I promise considerably less drama." He attempted a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Unless, of course, she's secretly been harboring strong opinions about my interview style." The joke earned a few nervous laughs, but the discomfort in the studio remained palpable. As the credits rolled, viewers across America sat in stunned silence, processing the unprecedented public meltdown between two of the country's most recognized figures. By morning, the confrontation had become international news. Network executives held emergency meetings, publicists issued carefully worded statements, and social media exploded with hot takes and memes. But one thing was certain: late-night television would never be quite the same again.